right, guys, so we've got the new headers in from Flowtech, and I gotta say I'm pretty damn impressed. Not just with the headers, but with this whole build in general. It is just going so swell in terms of being able to use stock aftermarket or OEM parts in a manner here that really shouldn't work, but are absolutely fitting properly without any real worries. And if they're not, it's well within the means to modify to get them to fit. But in the case of these headers, it's definitely a good story. So we've got the passenger side header over here. On the last ones, we were having some clearance issues with the control arm here, that it just would not fit. Now we've got plenty of clearance on this guy. The angle of that header is also quite better with regards to that front runner, which we were having with the main issue. So now instead of running towards the front of the collector, it's running towards the back of the collector, so that really does a lot better. But yeah, in terms of the clearance on this guy, it's positioned in the perfect position with the 10R80, and the only close point is here near the frame, but we're gonna go ahead and fix that here in a little bit with some readjustment of the engine. So really not too big of a deal. If we go over to the driver's side, still very good news. Actually, let me see if I can get a little bit better picture in over here, so you can see the header now for the most part. So this, again, the first header on this side, our issue was it would just clip the steering column. And so this design brings it all the way up and then back down. I'm not sure if this one is collecting in the front or the back. It looks like near the back of it. So with that first runner out of the way, and we've kind of got a little bit of jumbleness of the header in the back, but all of that clears the frame. So I'll get into the car here in a little bit and show you, but the closest point on this one, definitely closer, and we're gonna have to massage it a bit in terms of moving some parts around, as well as just the engine, is the clearance of that steering column joint, that universal joint, to that front runner. I think we can get easily 1/4 of an inch. We still want to try and get a exhaust wrap on this guy, a lava glass exhaust wrap. So we may need to do a little bit more, but there's a few things I think we can do to get the clearance necessary on that steering. Just because these headers are already coated, they already got ceramic coating on it, and really they're ideal for the shape, for the collectors and the size range. So these are, again, 1 7/8 size, so really nice for any future plans we have with this guy. So let's go ahead and jump onto the bottom of the car, and you can see a little bit better of the headers. All right, guys, we are now under the car on the driver's side, and you can see that beautiful collector coming down right next to the 10R80. Really, it just clears everything perfectly. So really the only thing on the driver's side of issue is bypassing the front drive shaft, since this is a driver's side drop 4-wheel drive system. And so all we need to do is make sure that the collector downpipe and our cats and everything else going into our Y pipe is going to clear this. Really shouldn't be any issue. We've got plenty of distance here. We can run along this frame rail all the way down past the transfer case and into our Y pipe. So things are looking really good on the worst possible side, which is this one with that drive shaft. So guys, this is really cool. This is going together better than even I thought it would. We'd figured we'd have to have some kind of weird bends, but honestly, this is just a straight shot with a slight curve coming down along this frame rail. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other side, the passenger side. All right, guys, so on to the passenger side with this header. And so again, perfect clearance, perfect angle. We've got the starter kind of mocked in here right now, just to show you guys that we can get it in. No issues whatsoever, easily changeable if it fails. And then the header, like I said, perfect angle coming down. And since this side doesn't have any drive shafts or anything crazy down it, honestly, we have so much room to work with. It's ridiculous. So this is really good, guys. We're happy definitely with the progress we're making so quickly, and just how easy some of these parts are fitting in. All right, guys, so this is the stock transmission cross member out of the Bronco. Interesting way it was designed, since it's not a off-the-shelf size in terms of width. It's actually two pieces, and they had a bunch of internal features here, which is why they had to make it two pieces. So they've actually got cylinders going through here for the bolts, a couple of nuts for the mounting points for the under armor, as well as just a bunch of other holes here for access. The big one here is the actual mount attaches through here on the bottom with two large bolts. Regardless, this entire cross member needs to be repositioned or remade, essentially, to have it repositioned, so that this mounting location is further back. And what we think the best way to do that is if we mimic the same style. So these two ends over here, they just move up into the frame rail segments, and then two shear bolts go through on either side. So what we're going to try and do is, using some of this steel stock that we've got, this is 3x2, we got some 4x4 and some 1x3. We want to try and remake this segment here, and then we'll cut it, weld it, and then we'll probably have an angled section that comes back up and another straight section that bridges back over, and then symmetric on the other side. And I'm thinking here, since you know, again, this is this is about 3.5 inches wide, so it's not a standard size that you can just get boxed for. What we're going to try and do, using this 3x2, we'll just put 2 1/4-inch plates. We got some plate back here that we're going to use for the engine mounts anyway. Put some 1/4-inch plate on the other side. That'll get us the width that we need to get into the stock frame. And then the center section here, I think I'm going to use some of this 4x4 box mounted this way, so it'll line up and it'll look pretty good. And then you'll have access through that box to be able to get the bolts onto these two studs for the mount. So, but at least we kind of know what the shape is going to be. We already looked at clearance of how the TC drops, so we know that essentially you can move it back without the bottom of the TC interfering with the segment here that would be. So we're pretty happy with that. So yeah, let's go ahead and see if we can get a template made for this guy and supporting the transmission. All right, guys, we are going to start sketching out the dimensions for this original transfer case member that obviously supports the entire rear of the powertrain. So we're going to go ahead and get some measurements of this box. We've already got some new steel picked up based on these rough measurements, but now we want to try and match the angles, match these bolt holes, match the center location here for our center jack point, and then anything else that we see important. I know a lot of these holes here on the bottom, at least some of them, are used to tie into potentially a skid plate that we could put on. So whether or not we put it in this first version or if it's in the second version, we just modify these since it's pretty easy. Put in some riv nuts or something like that to be able to mimic the nuts in here. That's probably what we'll do. But regardless, to get started with, we need to copy this in this portion on both sides, and then we will figure out our angles, probably with some templates underneath of the car, to make sure that we can get up and around so that we have the distance offset from the center, so 3-4 inches off. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so we got some measurements down so that we can reference. What we're gonna go ahead and do now is get the stuff out to start cutting the steel. I did double check what the angle of this was, around 23 degrees, so we're gonna try and mimic that with our cut so that we can just get those welded together in the exact same manner here, and then the difference occurs that we need to get the entire cross member back a little bit. So let's go ahead and get this stuff out. Alright guys, so I just got under the car to swap in the original mount just to see how it cleared. And when I was doing it, it struck me that honestly, I really don't need to make a new transmember. If you look at just how close these guys are, and with the steel that I have for the centerpiece of the member I was going to make, honestly, I think if I take off this top center support section right here, that with that removed, I could custom make kind of a shelf piece that matches the contour of this with the height needed to ultimately get this, but I want to make sure I've got adjustment capability so I can go up or down a little bit. But regardless, yeah, it just struck me that honestly, I really don't need to make one. It's so close to the center of the original transmember. I'm really only off, maybe 3 inches to the main core support here, that with the additional steel that I got, the square piece that I was going to use already, it's got like maybe 1/8 or 3/16 walls, so it's definitely even sturdier than this welded piece of crossmember here that they welded together. So yeah, I think since this bracket we would just get rid of or sell or something like that, why not see if this works right now? So I think that's actually going to be what I do first before I go make this whole new crossmember with the angle, because like I said, the nice part about reusing this is not only is it to save a bunch of time with the angles and the bolt holes and getting those set up just right. Otherwise I have to slot them and it wouldn't fit super well. But the other part is it already has the nuts for Under Armour and skid plates under here. So if we want to be able to bolt that on as is, this original crossmember still works out. And I'll show you guys here in a little bit when I take this out. There's only really 4 strips of weld that we need to be able to take this off with. So a little bit time, maybe 30 minutes with an angle grinder, I can get this cap off and then start getting a chunk of that 4-inch square cut through and get some measurements of this with a little bit of space so that I can add some washers as is. That way I can immediately control the height just to be just right, to be around 3 degrees or so. It's not quite that off this surface, but around 3 degrees is what we're aiming for down, tail shaft down. So yeah, let's take this thing back out and see if we can take off that part. Get the I'll probably actually just get the measurement right now between these two, and then yeah, I'll probably cut in that section. And the nice part is the mount, since it comes directly up, the square piece will have slots in it anyway, so this will be adjustable still without any issue, and the square piece will have access through this side to be able to put in the 2 nuts on this mount. So let's see how that works. That's pretty cool. Alright guys, so the top mount came off super easy, no issues whatsoever. Just took off on the very edge of the weld here, so I've retained basically that entire thing in case I want to. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to go ahead and shave down the welds on all 4 sides here. And yeah, then this thing will be cleaned up. I'll clean up the area of the paint around, and that would essentially be ready for it to weld on this square piece. So now you can kind of visualize what I'm trying to do here. This piece is going to get notched over this guy. Yeah, so it shouldn't be too bad to notch that over. I just essentially got to cut off a section of it and it'll stay off. In fact, that's probably pretty close to my 2 inches right there, since that's what I decided to get. And yeah, the bolt holes will be right around over here, so we'll have easy access up underneath. I don't think without any issue, but we'll definitely double check before we weld anything.
Oh, I just wanna feel free, and I just wanna be me. Yeah, I just wanna go so crazy. I just wanna be a freak. Yeah, I just wanna rise to the top. Yeah, I just wanna go reach the peak. So I've been really well focused on success. Hey, y'all will see. Yeah, you won't see that I will get it, cause I'm really focused, man. I make it with the rap and I just follow my path. I just follow my passion. To me, this is what's precious. Yeah, in my soul, man, I can feel it. So every single verse, man, I just gotta go and kill it, man. I gotta be the kid. I could be the guy taking you wild. I could be the villain. I'm good as a kid. Lately I'm painting my path on my way. Yeah, I got no time that I can waste, so I've been sitting in the space. Yeah, making rest every day, man. You know that I go insane. Yeah, I hit you with a bullet to the brain. Let us stop first, cause we going insane. You don't know what I'm gonna do. You don't know what is next. And I'm loving the fact, truly it's making me blessed. Cause I work on my team, no snakes in the grass. And we have been trusting the wind because of the work that we did in the past. Because of the work that we did in the past. Man, we went to hours, we barely got rest. So I get the realm and we didn't finesse. So I got the feelings that we might.
Alright guys, so after probably about an hour worth of metal working, we finally got a piece with a notch in it. This stuff is 3/16 thick. Pretty sure, yeah, 3/16, not quarter. But regardless, it is some hefty steels. It took a little bit to cut. Got some pretty straight cuts the first time around. This one needed a little bit of work, as did one of the sides. So I cleaned them up with the angle grinders here. But now we're fitting pretty square onto the cross member. But what I think I want to do now before I tack anything down is I'm going to go double check off to the side how this looks. And then I think I'm going to try and get the center holes at least marked. And I might hole saw out a lower area here so that I can get a tool in to be able to tighten these guys effectively when they're coming through here. Because you can certainly get the nut on here without any issue, but when it comes to tightening it, you would have small actions with the wrench, with a ratcheting wrench, versus being able to drive it much like how the stock one has it with a hole through the center. So I think I'm probably going to put a hole saw, a large hole saw here, you know, maybe 2.5 inches or so. Be able to get a tool in there and at least an extension on there. I think that's probably what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and play around with it a little bit, and then we'll catch you guys in a second. Alright guys, so I've got it mocked back up. You can see my new notched bracket piece extension coming off of it just to the side. I think this is going to do the trick. I might shorten this guy a little bit more. I was conservative on my cut. But it looks like I could probably take about an inch off of this, and I would be doing pretty well still to make that evenly spaced between here and about the end of this mount, this Ranger mount. So now that this is looking pretty good, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark center line here in a second of these two screws on this piece. When it's fully butted up against that, then I know that's the center line of my screws in its like default position, although it's movable. That'll probably be somewhat roughly to the center of my slot, since I can't go too much this way. I don't know if I can go too much, but I guess I can, because I can actually well, almost. If I cut the end of the studs off a little bit, I would be fully movable even over this mount if I needed to move it that far, but certainly I won't need to. So regardless, this, just forget that whole segment. I will go ahead and mark the center line of this guy, and that should be roughly about the center of my slot, and I'll probably put a 1/2 inch in either direction. That should give me enough direction, maybe 3/4 of an inch, something like that, at least towards the back, so that there's plenty of slop in case I need it, and then oversize the holes just a little bit. That'll be the plan for the holes in here, and then I will put a hole saw access hole for the tool just on this bottom side. So I think that is the plan. Let's go ahead and get those holes drilled in this puppy.
Winning the match, when we go in, we win in the match. So that's how we do, cause we be the best. We be the best, yeah, we be the best. Yeah, we be the best, we be the best. Hey, yeah, we be the best, hey, we be the best. Yo, you wanna come suggest you never really come and test it, but otherwise I will smack your face like Michael Jordan does with a ball in the basket. Oh damn kid, but you didn't expect it. You never really thought that this could just happen, but now really come on and we pull out with the action. Cause people defeat those they don't get it like.
Alright guys, so we got the slots in the top all machined in. Be a tough piece to put on a mill. I don't have one right now, but definitely pretty tall. Otherwise we would have definitely used one if we had one. Otherwise we've got to get the hole on the bottom now. But yeah, we just test fitted our other bracket and it's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and get the access hole, and then at the very end I'll go ahead and cut a little bit more off of the back. Alright guys, so after much deliberation with this hole saw, we finally got the access port for the two mount nuts in here so we can easily get a tool on without any issues. I went ahead and cleaned up the rest of the sides, getting ready for it to weld. So what I'm going to do now is test fit the part into the cross member of the vehicle. It's still in there. Unfortunately, I need to clean up the cross member a little bit more. It's just really tight from the factory. And so we're gonna go ahead and go do that real quick and test fit this guy. And then once it's all test fit, we think we like it, we're gonna go ahead and get some welds on it. And yeah, it should be pretty much ready to go at that point. We'll pretty much probably just keep it as is, unpainted for a little while until we're ready to solidify everything and we're happy with the mount. But after that, yeah, we'll go and get this entire part painted up. Alright guys, so we got the new piece mounted to the cross member. It's looking pretty damn good. I'm loving the way this turned out. This should easily be able to support the entire powertrain. Really, there's you know, maybe 100 to 200 pounds at most on this back part. When you look at the distribution between everything, but certainly it needs to be as sturdy as possible given this is an off-road type of vehicle. So definitely got some pretty beefy welds on it, and yeah, I think this should work out pretty well. Once this thing cools off, we're gonna go ahead and throw it into the car. I went ahead and filled in those old spots with some minor welds, so I'll go ahead and ground those down. Once we get it in there, once we get it test fit, we'll probably leave it there, like I said, for a little while, and then once we're ready, we will go ahead and clean it up, get it all painted and looking brand new. All right guys, so we got the bracket all made up now. I think we're gonna be ready to go and throw it in just a second into the original holders on either side and see how it fits in the center. This was designed to have spacers, so I do expect to have some kind of shims that we can add in to get the angle just right, just how we want it, to make sure there's proper clearance for anything above it, as well as just proper tail shaft angles. Let's go ahead and get it in there. All right guys, so we got the trans mount in, supporting by itself, no stands, no jack stands, anything like that. Looking really good, really solid. And so I think I mentioned earlier, we designed the mount so that we would have to add spacers to get the appropriate angle here on the back. I put in, when I welded it, a 3-degree downward slope to mimic that of the desired angle of the entire powertrain, about -3 degrees from horizontal. So what we're going to go ahead and do, since we're going to be plasma cutting some 1/4-inch plates and a few other plates for the front mounts when we get to those, we're going to go ahead and plasma cut out this design here so that we can add shims as we need to get the perfect angle for clearance and everything like that here on the transfer case. But the big takeaway is that we double checked everything is centered on the transfer case, so we're lined up perfectly in the hoop for the main drive shaft here, and then the only other thing we're looking at is just clearance on the top and on the sides here through the transfer case notch. But yeah, it looks like this thing is going to work out well. We'll easily be able to get the bolts in here through the bottom and be able to tighten them as well through that access hole. And then certainly we've got that adjustment as we need to, front to back, and a little bit side to side, but not too much. We definitely want to keep it centered as much as possible. But yeah, regardless, this is looking really good. So we had to end up cutting a little bit. I think I'll show a little bit of footage of that, a little bit of the original fork on this cross member is just clipping, and so we needed to sand it down, as well as kind of pry it a little bit just to get the clearance. This side was doing fine, but unfortunately this side just was a little bit too tight, and so we had to end up beating it with a rubber mallet a few times in our initial test. But I think we're good now. It goes in by hand pretty well. So yeah, once we're done with the front mounts and getting this thing set up, we'll probably remove this mount again and get it all painted and looking pretty. But yeah, I think this is definitely a success right here. All right guys, so the next step here we'll get a little bit into is getting the front mounts of the motor for the Bronco swap in. And so we've done, obviously there's motor kits that you can buy, nothing really for anything new like this. So what we've done is we've measured the mounting holes for the Coyote out of the vehicle, and we've made some templates to start with. We've got some 1/4-inch just foam board here. So this is going to mimic what our 1/4-inch steel that's going to mate the main part of the mount is, and we went ahead and created a model of that as well. So what we're going to do probably in the next episode is mount these in into the car as it sits right now with the headers and all the other accessories on, and see how it fits. And then what it'll allow us to do is, with some additional foam board here, we'll be able to make the forks as well as the V6 mounts that we're getting here in the mail. We'll essentially be able to recreate some mounts similar to how a regular Coyote swap would be in another application, or just how the V6 is mounted inside the vehicle. But we went ahead and we've modeled up some of the plates already so that we can adjust them. That will ultimately get that 1/4-inch steel plasma cut out of, along with some of those shims for the transmission. So probably here in the next episode, we'll go ahead and get these guys mounted in there, get some of the fork pieces mounted in there. Again, we want to make this plate adjustable on both sides, X and Z direction. And so we'll definitely be able to get the adjustment that we need to clear anything, or just provide that extra clearance. So go ahead and stay tuned for that. All right, guys, so that's going to be a wrap for today's episode. In the next episode, we're going to go ahead and start working on these front motor mounts that we didn't get to. So we've got our foam board replicas right now. Once we get those guys in there, we'll get some forks in there. We're just waiting on the mail for some of the V6 mounts from the Bronco. That'll allow us to be able to get into the sides here, get those mounted up, get the forks in place, and see exactly what kind of style and geometry we need to plasma cut out of our 1/4-inch plate. So after that, yeah, the motor will be pretty much positioned in there, rock solid. We'll finish up some clearance issues that we have with the headers, and then it's on to getting some of the peripheral brackets as well as the lines and the electrical looms clearance to make sure everything can run around the engine as it needs to. And then the next step after that is certainly the most interesting, the electrical functionality integration with the original Bronco stuff. Guys, we're having a blast getting this thing together. Remember to show some support, like, comment, subscribe below, and yeah, we're gonna have tons of updates coming, so stay with us.
Where does it even start and end?
I don't know.
Get the knife.
Yeah, why don't you just cut
I
it?
do need a knife.
If you make another incision in his leg, you can bandage it more.
Really?
Yep.
Alright, keys it is.
Yeah,
My
you're right, we
God.
can't show it on YouTube.